Welcome to the Healing Narcissistic Trauma Conference. I'm Susan Ball, your abuse recovery specialist and your host for the event. Today I'm chatting with Amelia Fortes. She is an intuitive energy healer, inspirational speaker, and self-love coach. She specializes in helping people transform their dating madness into romantic magic, find their ideal career direction, and up-level their money and abundance. As a love and relationship expert, she uses her intuition and loving guidance to help frustrated singles feel free and delicious in their romantic life. Whether you are in a relationship or not, if you seek more romance intimacy, Amelia can help you get there. Hi, Amelia. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Susan. Thank you so much for having me. And hi, everybody listening.
Yeah, it's exciting. I love the conversation we're about to have.
Yes.
About the 5 deceptions that keep you from a healthy and thriving relationship. And I know that the ladies and gentlemen who are listening to this are going to be really curious about this, Amelia.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It sounds very sexy and intriguing, doesn't it?
It does. And everybody's wondering, so how do I get a healthy relationship? What are these deceptions?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to just dive right in?
Yeah, let's go with deception number 1.
All right. Well, before diving into deception number 1, I just want to say, I've been in this field for a few years now, but I've been studying relationships my whole life. Ever since I was a little girl, my sun zodiac sign is Cancer, my moon is Taurus. There's a lot of interpersonal relationship pleasure stuff that I've always been studying, and I have a huge family, and so I was always observing the relationships around me and how people interact and all of that. And so I would like to say these 5 deceptions come from well over 30 years of studying people and humans. And I was very excited when I created them, because I was able to see, and I working with my clients for a few years, like any problem that they were having, I was able to file it under one of these deceptions. So it is very sexy and intriguing. And yes, of course, we want to know what they are. And so let's just dive right into them. So the first one is really about denying what you really want. And I see this all the time. And one common example is where people are just like, yeah, I'm okay with just hooking up. Sure, I'm not looking for anything serious. And you say that because you think that's what people want to hear, and to the point where you even convince yourself that that's what you want, when deep, deep down, you absolutely are looking for something serious. And so this deception can be pretty insidious, because it kind of has you shoot yourself in the foot from the get-go, where you're going into dating situations basically lying to yourself and to the person that you're dating, like, yeah, cool, we can keep it super cash, no problem, I'm not looking for anything serious. But you totally are. And so that's where one of the ways that deception number 1 can show up, where you're just basically lying to yourself and everyone else about what you really want.
Yes, and I love this one because I meet so many people who do this, and I was probably guilty of it too. But I've run into women who they meet someone, Amelia, and the man says, "I don't want children." And instead of walking away, she says, "Well, I do, so I'm going to just run in and convince him that he wants children."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or she doesn't want children and he does, but you convince yourself that somehow you can change, manipulate, encourage, whatever word you want to use. But what you're really doing is you're lying to yourself and the other person about what the outcome is going to be.
Exactly. That's another perfect example. And it's like, why do we lie about these things? And I think on some level, we don't think that it's possible to have what we want, or we're so desperate for love that we'll just lie just to get our foot in the door.
Yeah.
And it's not like bad people, like, oh, you're a liar, you're a bad person. It's just we've been conditioned to sweep what we really want under the rug, or like bury it deep down, hoping somehow it'll change on the back end, and it usually ends in disaster.
Yes. And then you have resentment, and then you're bitter, and it's unhealthy all around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is. It is.
So the deception number two, I'm curious about this one.
Yeah, deception number two is called unhealthy power play. And so this is really where you get into a power play with the people you're dating or the person you're dating. And essentially it's playing off of not being a match. And so either you feel you're not good enough on some level for the kind of romance that you want. And so you end up attracting or being attracted to unavailable people, for example, or someone who's actually taken or married or lives in another city or another country or is a different sexuality than what you are. Like I work with a lot of people who like gay men who are in love with someone and it's a straight man and it's like he's straight, like he's not available to you. um so it can look a lot of different ways, and it comes from a place where it's somewhere inside you, you don't feel good enough for what you want, and so you attract situations that continue to make you feel not good enough. Or on the flip side, you can feel superior or arrogant even, or maybe even too good for. And so what that looks like sometimes is like, oh gosh, there's this guy that's so into me and I just don't know why, he's kind of boring, he's too nice, and you kind of feel a little bit too good for them. And what ends up happening is this really frustrating cycle, because now you're bouncing back and forth between chasing the unavailable guy who you think is way too good for you and always makes you feel not good enough, while rejecting these available men who are actually worshiping the ground you walk on, but they're boring or too nice or strange or whatever. And you're just in this cycle where you never end up being a match with what you want. Either you feel not good enough or too good for, and it becomes this weird power play.
Amelia, what you were talking about the nice guy and the bad boy, I can definitely relate to that because I dated all kinds of bad boys. I had 4 abusive relationships, but when I'd meet a nice guy, I didn't know what that was. And in my healing journey, I learned that I was addicted to the drama in the sense that that was what I thought love and life was, because my growing up was chaos. There was always drama. So I processed that as love. So I would meet a nice guy who would, pull out my chair and be nice and put me in the car and all of that stuff. And I'd be like, what is this?
Yeah, it was like boring even, right?
Boring.
Yeah. And that's where the power play comes in, where you choose the bad boys because they keep you feeling not good enough, and then you reject the nice guys because on some level you think is like, oh, you're too good for that. Not that that was necessarily what you were thinking, but it's basically just speaking to like this power play where you're never on the same level as the person you're with.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of the women that I talk to who are in abusive relationships or toxic relationships or narcissistic style relationships, they love the bad boy as well.
Absolutely. And what you just described, I totally relate to. The nice guys were weird and boring, and the bad boys were so elusive and mysterious and hot, and their chemistry was always really great, but they always treated me like crap. So, yeah, so that's where deception number two, unhealthy power play, comes in. And actually what you described about how your upbringing being chaotic, and so that's how you learned what love was, that actually also starts to move us into deception number three.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Nice segue.
Yeah, it does. I mean, these deceptions kind of like braid into each other as well, but they're also very distinct in their nature. But what you described is a little bit of the unhealthy power play, which is number two. And then number three is energetic entanglement with the past. And so what you described is one way that that can show up, where your upbringing has conditioned you to understand a certain form of relationships. So with a chaotic upbringing, or maybe witnessing an abusive relationship at a young age, it conditions your subconscious mind to recognize and be familiar with chaos and drama and abuse. And so that creates that energetic entanglement with the past, because our subconscious minds are energetically entangled with the past. We are constantly looking to create what's familiar to us in our lives, whether our conscious mind wants to or not. So even though your conscious mind might be like, this is not healthy, deep in your psyche, in your subconscious, you are familiar with drama and unhealthy behavior. So it is something you will always be attracted to, hence the entanglement piece. So the deception is the entanglement. The way out of it is to heal and untangle that.
Absolutely. I love that. I call it our twisted and tangled love stories from childhood,
Yes.
because they make a mess. We go out there and it's so familiar, even though your mind is saying, wow, this is really not a good relationship, this is really unhealthy, but you don't know what else is out there. Like, you don't understand the different, how would you put that, a healthy relationship.
It's so unfamiliar. It's like, what even is it? I remember when I was younger and there would be men or even boys, like when I was a teenager, treat me so well. I literally did not know how to receive it or how to react. I'd be like, what? Like, I'd be flinching when they would like open the door. And looking back, I was like, oh, they were being good to me. Interesting.
Yes, I've done that too.
Yeah, I couldn't receive it at the time because it was so unfamiliar.
Yeah, so we go after what's familiar and we just don't know better, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you're right, we have to untangle all of that in order to understand it, and in order to understand and seek out and make room for a healthy relationship.
Exactly. And we need to, right? It's kind of like untangling your hair or untangling a necklace that got tangled up. Like, you can't wear it the way that it's meant to be worn if it's all tangled up.
Correct. I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So deception number
Yeah.
deception number 4.
Yeah. It's
This
unconscious.
is interesting, actually.
Yeah,
Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay. It is an interesting one. Unconscious and harsh judgment of self and others. So it's kind of like it sounds like it could kind of like be entanglement, but really it's those snap judgments that you have about either men or women, depending on who you like to date, or people in general, that you have that actually color your whole experience. And so I'll share even just my own personal experience with that. So growing up, I kept hearing, all men are dogs. Men only want one thing.
Oh.
And so I kept hearing those things. And what I realized is that in my dating experiences, I was always expecting men to only want one thing. And so when there actually were men who liked me for me, my sense of humor, my intelligence, my kindness, my character, my personality, I was still always like unconsciously protecting myself from the fact that all they want is sex. And
right.
that's not a good thing to have when you want to open yourself up to love, if you're constantly guarded and protecting yourself. Another example is just based on my own experiences, I created this unconscious judgment that men are dangerous. And so that was another reason why I kept protecting myself. So even when there was a nice man who's like, let me take you out on a date and pull out the chair and all that good stuff, I was always on guard. And men can feel that, or not even just men. The other person can feel when you're not receiving them fully. And so it wasn't the best breeding ground for a budding, loving, intimate relationship if the person I'm dating doesn't feel that I can even trust them, like not even a little bit. And so we all have these unconscious judgments. Another example that I'll have from a man's point of view, men who like dating women. I remember I was talking to a guy and I could tell, like a potential dating situation, but I could tell he had some pretty harsh unconscious judgments of women, because he would talk about women and say like, oh yeah, there was this girl at this club one time, but she just kept wanting attention. She just kept wanting attention. And I could tell he had this like judgment that women want attention in a way that's detrimental to him.
Right.
And I was like, this isn't going to work out, because he's always going to think that I'm wanting attention in a way that takes away from his own sovereignty or whatever. You know what I mean? I could just tell he was like bitter about that. And so this is how it like shows up, and people can feel that. And so it really gets in the way of being able to create deep loving bonds with people when they can feel you judging them.
Yes. Yeah, it's true, isn't it? And I'm sure there's a lot of men who judge women as gold diggers as well, if they have money.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Yes, it is true that some men are dangerous. Yes, it is true that there are gold diggers out there. So this is not saying that those kinds of people don't exist, but the problem happens when you make it an unconscious blanket judgment that you then project onto all men or all women, and that's where it gets in the way. Because if you're just expecting someone to be a gold digger or expecting someone to be dangerous, you're not actually being with them and seeing them for who they really are. You're just expecting them to be that judgment that you have.
Yeah, that's fabulous, because when I was growing up, my aunts and my mom and my sister spoke to me with the terminology all men, all men.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They never differentiated and said that man or this man that I met. It was all men, and they were all put into the same box, the same framework, and that's the framework that I worked with.
Exactly. Same here.
Yeah.
All want one thing. It's not really true, and it actually does a disservice, because there are a lot of men who want deep loving bonds and physical intimacy, but that's not the only thing they want. And when they're being framed that way, it's not good, and same thing with like all women are gold diggers, right? Like it's not fair to just put that on all of that gender.
Yes. No, it's so true. And the other thing that I was exposed to growing up was that men don't like women who basically talk too much or stick up for themselves. Yeah. So that makes women, and I don't know how many are out there who are experiencing that, but I'm sure that there are quite a few who are being told that their voice is not valued by men.
Yes.
For whatever reason. It can be because they're saying no, or it can be because, they want to live in a different type of house or not have children or whatever it is, but their voice is not valued by men. And that was something I struggled with in abusive relationships, Amelia, because you're thinking to yourself, I need to stand up for myself. I need to speak out about this, but my voice is not valued.
Absolutely. And I think that could even be like a societal thing at the societal level.
Yes.
For sure.
Absolutely. And deception number 5. I love this one because how many, I'll say this after you start. Go ahead. Deception number 5.
It's unrealistic expectations and checklists. And this is speaking exactly to the infamous checklist, because we know you have one. And a lot of teaching out there teaches us to make a list of what you want. And I actually am an advocate for that teaching. Yes, make a list. But here's the thing, most of us are making the wrong list. We are making a list of features and benefits. It's like we're treating human beings like we're purchasing a washing machine that needs to have the warm, cold, and hot water, and the super cycle, and the like the extra buttons and the extra widgets. And human beings are not that. Human beings are complex, beautiful creatures with depth and range and all kinds of things. And so basically what I say is, yes, make a list, but not a checklist of features and benefits like height, age, eye color, you know, penis size, like whatever. Does he have a job? Like things like that. Make a list of values, because values tells you the character of a person. And one of the funniest things that I always say to my clients is like, you know, they'll be telling me, oh, I met this guy. He's so great. He has a good job. He has a nice car. He has a nice apartment. And I'm like, do you know how many jerks have nice cars and nice houses and good jobs? Like, the good job itself does not tell you the quality of the person.
No.
So this deception is actually a call for you to dig deeper and dig beyond the features and benefits of the person. And so it's like, okay, good job. How do we peel that back or go even deeper? What is it that really matters to you about the good job? Oh, well, the good job tells me that this person has worked hard, has committed to a craft, to be good enough to move up the ranks and get a good title and create financial stability in their life. And so I'm like, see, that's different. So you want someone who values hard work, who values commitment, who values stability, emotional and financial stability. So having a good job alone doesn't tell you enough. So that's where I say, like, let go of the checklist, the features and benefits, and you want to dig deep and get to the values. What is it that's actually going to tell you something about the person, not just what they look like on the outside or on paper?
Exactly. And so many people do that checklist of features and benefits without getting to the deep, real stuff that they want, the core of it all. And those features and stuff, you can say, okay, he's got to be 6 foot tall, dark, and handsome, built like a, you know,
Adonis.
Machine. Yeah, Adonis. He's got to, he's going to have all of that stuff. But you know what? When he's 50 or 60 or 70, is he really going to be that person? That's all going to fade away. Unless he's Sylvester Stallone, he has lots of money to spend on, plastic surgery. But for the most part, as everybody ages, that becomes less of, it becomes less. Let's just put it that way. The focus on the physical person. So you want somebody you can interact with on an emotional and a personal level, on an intellectual level, not the physical level.
Exactly. And I would even say, with the tall, dark, and handsome thing, 6 foot, built like an Adonis, god. What I usually when I work with my clients to dig deeper, I'll be like, well, aside from the physical attributes, why is that important to you? And a lot of times what's important is like, okay, I want someone tall because I want to feel safe and protected. Like, that's kind of really what's underneath the surface sometimes, at least with me, because I like men who are taller than me too. And I also like them really tall. But when I think about why that's important, like beyond the materialistic, like on the surface thing, it's like, because I like to be like cuddled at night. I like to be the little spoon. I like to feel safe and protected when I'm walking in the streets with my man, kind of thing. And so that's where it goes beyond that. It's like, because not only like a 6 foot person can make you feel very not safe and not protected is the point, like with this whole character, checklist versus values, right? And so it's like, what I value is being with someone who in their presence I feel safe and protected. That's a completely different list item than someone who's 6 foot and built like a god. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, it's entirely different. It puts a whole different spin on it.
Exactly.
And I love that. I love that because I actually like a taller guy too. And that is why. And when I thought about that in my recovery, it was for that reason, because I wanted to feel safe and secure. However, all the men I dated were abusive tall men. So that was a bit of a reconciliation that was rough.
Yeah, 6 foot doesn't mean you'll feel safe and secure.
Correct.
And that's really the point with that deception of like the actual feature does not tell you about the person. So you've got to dig deep and choose from a different place.
I love all of these 5 deceptions. So
Yes.
I just love this conversation. So just before we go, Amelia, what is a great way to perhaps take one of the deceptions and look at it from your point of view to see if you are living that deception?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I think like we can just keep going deeper with the last one, deception number 5. So like I said, go back to your checklist because I know you have one, and really dig deep on each one and ask yourself, what's the real thing that's important to me about this item? What's the core of why this is important to me? And so like for example, okay, do I really need someone that's 6 foot and built like a god, or what I really need is someone that I can feel safe and protected around? And so when you're out dating or meeting people, you don't want to look for their height. You want to look for, do I feel safe and protected, right? You don't want to look for their job necessarily, but you want to look for, does this person seem to value hard work and commitment?
And another thing I just want to add to this, Amelia,
Yep.
is I personally, this was something that I had to figure out for myself, checklist,
Yep.
was one of the things that I really value in a man is when he treats me like a lady. And my point to that is I know that there's a lot of women out there who don't value that. And they may look on you and say, well, why would you want that? Don't let other people's opinion change your standards and your wants and your needs and desires in your partner.
Oh, absolutely. That's such a great point. And I think that could even kind of fit in with deception number 4 a little bit, where you kind of have this judgment around what you should want or what you should have. And I know for me, I definitely was influenced. I grew up in a family with a lot of women, and especially on my mother's side, they're very opinionated women. And so I grew up just hearing these really strong opinions of a lot of different women about what kind of men we should all be dating. And when I started dating, I realized I was like, okay, is this what I want, or is this what the women in my family wanted? And so part of my journey too was coming to terms with and accepting what I wanted. And yeah, I think with this different waves of feminism, there's a whole, oh, I can open my own doors and stuff like that, which is fine if that's what you want. But for me too, like I want to be treated like a lady as well. Like I'm like, open my doors, pull out my chair. This is what I want. Like I don't need to open my own door to feel powerful in my own sovereignty, But if you are someone who wants to open your own door, then also, yeah, be okay with that too. It's really, yeah, I love that. Want what you want.
Want what you want, because like you, I grew up with strong women too, Italian women.
Yep.
Very, very Italian women. And I got married. My first wedding was my should wedding, I call it, because I was 26. And my Nona and my mom were like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with this guy. Oh, okay, I'll marry him. That's also not healthy.
Absolutely.
Because we're actually dating and marrying the guy that our family wanted, not what we wanted.
Yeah, and then we have to be the one that like sleeps in his bed at night. And so it's like, wait a second, who am I shopping for?
Yeah, I know. Like, no, I don't want this. I don't want this at all. So yeah, know what you want, go after what you want, and don't let anybody else talk you out of it. Be strong in your boundaries and your personal wants and desires.
I actually want to say something about that too in my own personal life, where it can be really detrimental, because I know this series is all about healing from the narcissistic abuse. And I was in a very abusive relationship in college from age 19 to 21. And I will say, I think one of the reasons I stayed, aside from the fact that it was, abusive and I was swirling, was that he looked like Ben Affleck And at the time, Ben Affleck was like a super hot like a super hot guy. Like he was the hunk of the year or whatever. And my mom really loved that. Like that was something that she would show off to her friends. Like, my daughter's dating Ben Affleck. And he was abusive to me. But in wanting, I think somewhere deep, deep down, and I think this ties in with deception number 3 as well, my energetic entanglement with my mother, wanting to please her, I totally disregarded my own feelings and my own abuse because I wanted to see her that happy about who I was dating, which is really twisted, but that's what happens. That's how bad it can get when you date for other people.
Exactly. And I can relate to that. I can relate to walking down the aisle, crying my eyes out, Amelia, with
Oh,
all of these people going, oh, she's crying. And I'm thinking, no, I want to run away.
oh goodness. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
date on your own terms. Look for what it is that you want. And, and it's fine. If you don't want to get married, you don't want to have kids, you don't, whatever it is, live and do you.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. Well said.
So, your free gift. You want to tell everybody about your free gift?
Yes, if we haven't, whet your appetite enough about the 5 deceptions, my free gift is actually a gorgeous 22-page PDF download that goes into much more detail about the deceptions. And I'm sure from hearing them all, you are probably thinking, oh, great, thanks for telling us the deceptions, but how do we get over it? Well, in the PDF, it has not only the deception, but also the medicine to each deception. And each one has a specific story of how I helped a client overcome that deception. So you were probably wondering that this whole time, like, okay, Susan, okay, Amelia, you're telling us all our problems, but how do we fix them? Well, this free PDF will give you some of the medicine as well as how some real women overcame these deceptions, including myself. So enjoy. It's yours to keep. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me through that download, and I'm happy to help you.
Thank you very much, Amelia, for joining me. Thank you to everyone for listening. I wish you deep, loving recovery, peace, and happiness. Bye for now.
Bye.